Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here because today we're unpacking something truly profound. You know, we often hear the word Dharma thrown around, and a lot of times it kind of just gets translated as a rigid religious law or a strict set of rules. But as we're going to discover today, that definition barely even scratches the surface. Dharma is actually the ultimate, dynamic, situational compass for our lives. It's quite literally the code that keeps both the universe and our personal lives from spinning into total chaos. So, if you've ever felt completely lost in the face of a massive life decision, well, you are in exactly the right place. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the King's Great Dilemma, then explore the argument for action and decode the 10 pillars of Dharma. After that, we'll get into Swadharma, action without attachment, and finally, the riverbanks of life.
So let's start with part 1, the King's Great Dilemma, set in the immediate aftermath of the Kurukshetra War. Let's really set the stage here. The Kurukshetra War has just ended, and it was the bloodiest, most devastating conflict imaginable. Millions have perished. Now, King Yudhishthira and his brothers, the Pandavas, have technically won the war, but as Yudhishthira looks around at the unbelievable destruction, he is completely overwhelmed by grief, sorrow, and just a crushing sense of guilt. And this forces an agonizing question upon him. Does he take the crown and rule the shattered, blood-stained kingdom, or does he just renounce the world entirely? Because right in this moment, the king desperately wants to forsake his hard-won kingdom, leave all his wealth behind, and retreat into the forest for a quiet life of spiritual escape.
In the source texts, Yudhishthira actually laments that he wants to go to the woods, escaping from the ties of the world, freed from grief, and just pouring oblations into the fire. And honestly, this perfectly illustrates a very human temptation, doesn't it? When the burden of our responsibilities feels incredibly heavy, when our own personal battles leave us totally exhausted, our first instinct is often to just run away. We want to drop everything and find a quiet place to hide. But, as we're about to see, running away isn't always the dharmic choice. Which brings us nicely to part 2, the argument for action, featuring the intense Bhima-Gita confrontation. So Yudhishthira's desire to just abandon the throne absolutely shocked his brothers, and there was no way they were going to let him just walk away. This leads to a fascinating confrontation, which is often referred to as the Bhima Gita, where his brothers Bhima and Arjuna fiercely push back against his desire to escape. Now, what's really interesting about this is how it perfectly contrasts two fundamental philosophies of life. On one side, we have nivritti, which is what Yudhishthira wants. It's the path of passive renunciation, withdrawing inward, stepping away from society. On the other side, we have pravritti, what his brothers are demanding of him, and this is the path of active engagement, of actually stepping up to your worldly duties and facing the absolute messiness of life head-on. Arjuna steps up with an incredibly pragmatic argument here. He states bluntly, that which is Dharma is established on the basis of riches. He's basically telling his brother that Dharma actually requires artha, which means prosperity, resources, and wealth. Think about it. You cannot protect the weak, rebuild a broken society, or fulfill the duties of a king if you are living in poverty in the woods. Arjuna is arguing that active engagement and generating wealth are not evils. They are the actual tools required to uphold Dharma in the real world.
Then Bhima jumps in, and he argues for a strict balance across 3 pillars of life. He says a true leader, a person truly living in the world, must balance 3 things: dharma or duty, artha or prosperity, and kama or pleasure. He tells Yudhishthira that if you only focus on wealth, you become greedy. If you only focus on pleasure, you lose your morals. And this is absolutely crucial, if you only focus on passive duty and completely ignore wealth and joy, your life is incomplete and society crumbles. You literally need all 3 to sustain a kingdom.
Let's look at part 3, the 10 pillars of Dharma, where we are defining the moral framework. So we have to ask, what actually is Dharma? This massive debate over whether to rule or retreat forces us to ask a deeper question. If it's not just sitting quietly in a forest, and it's not just blindly fighting wars, what is it? Well, according to the ancient text, the Manusmriti, Dharma is the harmonizing moral order. It is the fundamental, natural law operating in the universe that keeps everything in balance. It's kind of like the gravity that holds society together. You see, Dharma isn't a restrictive set of rules designed to punish you. It's the inner compass that ensures you act with integrity when no one is watching, which prevents the world around you from descending into chaos. The Manusmriti breaks this massive concept down into 10 incredibly practical, universal virtues. And notice how internal the first 5 are.
We have dhriti, the patience to remain steadfast when things get tough; kshama, the strength to forgive; dhamma, controlling your own mind; asteya, never taking what isn't yours; and shocha, keeping your body and your intentions pure. These aren't just religious concepts, guys. These are the core disciplines that build personal resilience and societal trust.
And here are the remaining 5 pillars: mastering your sensory impulses, applying sharp intellect, seeking true knowledge, committing to absolute honesty, and maintaining the absence of anger even when you're provoked. When you look at this complete list, it becomes crystal clear that living a dharmic life is truly about mastering your own mind. It's all about self-governance. So if Yudhishthira runs to the forest out of grief and frustration, he's actually failing these very pillars of steadfastness and emotional control.
Moving right along to part 4, Swadharma, your unique path and personal duty in the Bhagavad Gita. But how do we apply this universal moral code to our specific messy lives? Well, to solve Yudhishthira's specific crisis, and honestly our own, we have to look at a concept from the Bhagavad Gita called Swadharma. Swadharma takes those universal rules we just talked about and localizes them directly to you. It is your unique, highly personal duty. It's dictated by your innate abilities, your natural qualities, and the specific stage of life you're in right now. What this means in practice is that the Dharma of a student is very different from the Dharma of a parent. And importantly for our story, the Dharma of a warrior king who just won a kingdom is fundamentally different from the Dharma of an aging forest ascetic. This brings us to an absolutely crucial, famous realization from the Bhagavad Gita. It is better to strive in one's own Dharma than to succeed in the Dharma of another. So, the crucial point is, for Yudhishthira to imitate a hermit and run to the woods might look holy on the surface, but it would actually be a massive failure of his own true purpose. His Swadharma, right in that specific moment, is to be a king, to clean up the mess, to rule with justice. Let's look at part 5, action without attachment, or nishkama karma. So this brings up the ultimate philosophical key. How do you actually engage in the material world? How do you rule a kingdom, earn wealth, and fight battles without losing your soul? How do you resolve that tension between pravriti, the active life, and a deep desire for spiritual peace? The answer is nishkama karma. This is craving-free, dharma-driven action performed entirely without selfish attachment to the final results. Honestly, this is the secret code. It means you can engage fully in the world. You can build a business, raise a family, or in Yudhishthira's case, rule a massive kingdom if your actions are driven by duty and service rather than a selfish craving for personal reward or ego. And you know, this brilliantly illustrates the cure for what we modernly call spiritual bypassing. You don't get a shortcut to enlightenment by abandoning your responsibilities. True liberation is found by mastering your mind through your daily actions, not by running away from them. When you act out of dharma rather than greed, every single decision, every mundane task at your job, every interaction with your family, it all becomes a form of worship. Ordinary life, lived consciously, is the highest meditation. Finally, we reach part 6, the riverbanks of life, balancing the Purusharthas. Let's move on and see how this all builds into one unforgettable visual metaphor. It beautifully brings together dharma, artha, kama, and ultimate liberation. Imagine a river. The water flowing in that river represents artha and kama, which are prosperity and pleasure. These are absolutely not evils to be suppressed. Wealth and desire are the dynamic, life-giving waters of human existence. They give our lives joy, energy, and forward momentum. Without water, a riverbed is just a dry, lifeless ditch. We need that vital energy in the world. But think about what happens to a river if it has no banks. The water spills everywhere, creating a destructive, chaotic flood. That is exactly what wealth and pleasure look like without morality. They just turn into floods of greed, corruption, and lust. And this is where dharma comes in. Dharma serves as the firm, structured riverbanks. The riverbanks don't stop the water, they guide it. They give the water purpose and direction, keeping it flowing safely and powerfully. And what is the destination of this river? Well, when the waters of prosperity and joy are perfectly guided by the strong, ethical banks of dharma, that river will inevitably, naturally flow right into the vast, boundless ocean. And that ocean is moksha, ultimate spiritual liberation and freedom. You don't have to choose between living in the world and achieving spiritual peace. If you build the right riverbanks, your active life leads you directly to that peace. Which leaves us with this final, vital question to reflect on as we wrap up this explainer. How are you navigating the waters of your own river?
Are you trying to dry up the water by running away from your duties like King Yudhishthira initially wanted to? Are you letting the water flood uncontrollably? Or are you actively building strong riverbanks of Swadharma, using those 10 moral pillars we talked about to guide your ambitions towards something truly great? Take a moment to think about your own compass today. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep reflecting, and I'll see you in the next explainer.